Welcome to Choreography, a podcast about the greatest sport on ice, figure skating. I'm Wendy Buskey.
And I'm Adrian Buskey, and this is our World Championships 2025 preview, part 2, Men and Ice Dance.
I'm sorry, I can't help giggling. It's a lot of preamble.
It's a lot of preamble, and I articulate it very carefully because I don't want it to turn into word salad because there's just so much to go through. In our previous episode, we previewed women's and pairs and did a full rundown of everybody who we thought were the primary contenders in those individual competitions, along with the dark horse candidates. And we also gave you our podium predictions, the way we think it's going to shake out, and then the way that not necessarily we want it to shake out, but sort of our heart picks, the people that we really would feel warm and fuzzy about if they managed to make it to the top of the podium.
Yeah.
You were a lot more specific about having full podiums. I usually just had one person or team that I was looking for. But I feel like there's an embarrassment of riches of skiers that we really like. And across most of these disciplines, I don't feel like there are wrong answers. There are just some people that I might enjoy a little bit more than others, but most of the time I just really like everybody. And so it's more the hope that everybody skates really well and has a great world and delivers just a fantastic event.
Yeah, I think it's kind of funny. I almost feel like it might seem disingenuous, like, oh no, you guys can't like everyone. And I'm like, no, we kind of do. I mean, we don't like everyone equally, I would say. We have our favorites, for sure.
Course, yeah.
But there's no one who I'm like, oh, I have to watch blah.
Yeah. We genuinely just really like watching the sport. So yeah, it's fun to see everybody. And mostly, like I said, I just want to see everybody do a great job, perform to the best of their abilities, and have it shake out fairly in the scores. That's all I want from this stuff. As a viewer, I don't want flops. I want great performances, moments for the ages. I want that back-to-back for the entire... I want to be exhausted by greatness by the end of it, you know?
I like that phrase. Exhausted by greatness.
Right. Even if it's not the highest scores ever, even if it's not the most technical things ever, whatever it is, I just want to have great performances that will make me want to watch them over and over again afterwards. And that maybe a few of them might be so cool as to make it out into the broader audience of people who maybe don't always watch skating and could find something to grab on that'd make them go, oh, this sport's really interesting. That's the stuff I want.
I want to put a pin in that because that's something we're going to be talking about a lot in the off season.
Yeah, for sure. So we are recording this on the afternoon of Saturday, March 22nd. So if any withdrawals or anything weird happens in between now and the actual start of the competition, we don't have a crystal ball. We couldn't see that coming. So we're going on the information that we have in the moment. This is, of course, spring in the Midwest for us. So spring is spranging, taxes are being done, and allergies are flaring like crazy. So if at any point our voices sound like they're absolutely coming apart, it's because every tree in our tree-laden neighborhood decided to burst forth with blooms and pollen simultaneously.
Oh yeah, it's very pretty, except for our car that has a thin layer of pollen all over it, and our sinuses are miserable. So apologies if we sound nasally.
Yeah, if we're nasally or we crack like adolescents, that's why.
So let's actually get this going and start with the men's competition, because I think this is probably going to be the biggest, craziest, wildest competition that there is at this event. Not because I think that it isn't fairly consistent with the season in that we kind of know who the favorite is going in, but men are men. They do wild, crazy things. And it can get real messy, so it makes it a little more volatile.
So the phrase that you'll hear a lot in skating discourse now is menning, which was, I believe, coined by Jackie Wong from Rocker Skating. And it basically means that the men can be wildly inconsistent, where they can show up one day and be utterly brilliant, and then the next day and be terrible, or flip. I think your perfect example of that is last season at Worlds, where France's Adam Chaumont had a terrible short program that had him in 19th place.
I thought it was like 21st. I don't know. It was something insane.
Something nuts. And he came back to make the podium in third because he had such an explosive free skate. That's like the perfect example of how you can go in one day and have a disaster, come in the next day and have a groundbreaking performance, or it can flip and go the other direction. that inconsistency plagues the men. So be ready for that type of thing to happen here as they throw the hardest things they can in order to try to grab all those technical points to be competitive with the obvious leader, US's Ilya Malinin.
Ilya Malinin comes in here. His high score this season is a 312.55. That is nowhere near the astronomical score that he got at Worlds last year, which was an insane score. I think this is a lot more real of what we've seen from Ilya, but he is still 12-ish points ahead in terms of his personal best this season over anyone else. He is going to go for broke. To use his words, he's not going to go ham. That's after the Olympics. But he is going to throw the most technical program of anyone here. That's a given. Whether he does it all cleanly, that's the question. But he has room to make a couple of mistakes, particularly in the free. But that short program has to go really well. Regardless, he is very unlikely to be off the podium. I think he has a very good shot at getting his second world title, but we'll have to see what happens on the day.
So like you mentioned, his top score this year was at Lombardia Trophy with a 312.55. That's a very big number, but I do want to step back really quickly to contextualize this by looking at Skate America at the beginning of the season, where Ilya did win that competition, but he did it with a pretty soft score of 290.12. That's a very beatable number from some of the other top competitors here. Now, since then, he has only made that number larger, made these programs more compelling. He has that short program to NF's running, and he has that free skate to I'm Not a Vampire, which I think works really well on him thematically, and it's obvious that he's very passionate in that performance, but he has been very sloppy in it at times. When we look at that program at US Nationals, he was trying to deliver something so wildly technical that it was more difficult than any program ever delivered by a man in competition before. But in the process, he had some issues. He fell on his back at one point.
That was a scary fall.
It was a scary fall. And I think there might have been some cues, whether or not he was called there at Nationals, because, you know, national scoring is a whole other thing. And he did his backflip that looked unsteady and had us kind of scared in the moment. Very exciting, but also at the same time, legitimately looked a little unsafe. He got an astronomical score there anyway, because again, it's US Nationals, but you could see that that was a program that was getting a little out of hand for him. So I think that if Ilya strategically wants to make sure that this is a clean win, he's got to come in here and not be so focused on explosive and much more focused on delivering quality skates.
The thing about Ilya, and I'm saying this not knowing him, not knowing his coaches.
Sounds like a title of a movie. The thing about Ilya.
He's going to do what he's going to do. For all that we're saying all these things, he is just going to do what he's going to do. I expect if his short program goes as well as that one has been going, and that of his programs is definitely my preference. His running short program, I think, is really good. His I'm Not a Vampire is nuts and compelling, but it's not as complete of a program. I feel like his short program is the thing that wins it for him, at least to me. But in that long program, I really think it's just momentum. And he goes on the ice and it's, am I going to throw the craziest program ever seen by man? Or am I going to leave a few things out? And he's so competitive. I expect him to throw absolutely everything he possibly can unless he feels unsteady. If he feels unsteady, then I think he'll pull back and go for clean. Otherwise, for all that he says he's not going to go ham, he's going to go ham. Beyond that, I think it has a lot to do. Every competitor always says they're skating for what they want to do in their personal best, and they're not really paying attention to what's going on. I think a lot of what he's going to do is going to hinge on what Yuma Kageyama does.
Right, because Japan's Yuma Kageyama comes in here as the other real threat for the top of the podium based on everybody's performances this season. Yuma is an extraordinary, complete skater. He has great technical, he has wonderful interpretive skills. The quality of his skates are undeniable.
They're brilliant.
And he definitely has a leg up on Ilya when it comes to the artistic expression and that total completeness. However, this has been an uneven season for him, as it has been for the Japanese men in general. And for Yuma coming in here, his top score of the season was at the NHK Trophy with a 309. we're focusing on ISU international competitions. We're not going to pull the scores from
nationals or other smaller, like non-international ISU events.
Right. There might be a couple of asterisks in here, particularly when we talk about Junwon Cha, but just looking at Yuma, that 309 is very strong, way ahead of the rest of the men other than Ilya, and definitely a threat if Ilya can't bring it all together. And I would expect that Yuma will score higher than that here. However, if you look at the rest of his season, he scored a 263.09 at Finlandia Trophy earlier this season.
But that was the worst I've ever seen Yuma Kageyama skate.
And it was rough. But it's just kind of getting a look when we talk about the menning, the inconsistency. That's an almost 40-point swing from his top score to his lower score. He won that competition, but that number is unlikely to hold up if he threw that here at Worlds. I have every confidence that Yuma is going to deliver beautiful programs and give us something very memorable. But if there is a weakness in his skating right now, it's how much he is mentally putting himself against Ilya Malinin and trying to figure out how he can beat Ilya. I think he needs to focus on just being the best, most complete version of Yuma Kageyama and deliver that Sound of Silence program, which he does beautifully, and just give us great skates, because I don't think that if he's trying to out-technical Ilya that it can work. I think he has to be as good as he can be and count on Ilya faltering in order to kind of sneak past him.
Yeah, I want to see the joyful Yuma, the joyful, focused, in his own moment Yuma that we've seen many times. But I agree, the season has left it a little bit iffy at best. It feels like he is so focused on, I must do more, I must be better, instead of just being the best version of himself that he can be. Someone that I think is a big question mark for me is another Japanese man of Shun Sato. Like you said, the Japanese men in general have been very on and off, hot and cold. Shun Sato's high score of the season is a 285.88, but that was back at Lombardia as well. Since then, he has been all over the place. It's really disheartening because I was like, this is the season of Shun. Because while a 285 is not touching Ilya and Yuma on the right day, it is absolutely saying, hey, I am going to be on this podium, or I'm going to be fighting for that bronze medal. I'm right there. But the past 3 competitions, maybe more, that I've seen from Shun have left me really sad, because I know he's capable of so much. He is right there on that precipice and just feels like he started getting that consistency that he needed, starting to grow more into that complete skater that we were hoping that he'll become. And then it just seems to have fallen apart recently. So I don't know what to expect from him here, but if he wants a chance of staying ahead of, say, Mikhail Shidorov, who's got a lot of heat, I don't know if he's going to be able to do it.
Yeah, I think that you linking Shun Sato with Mikhail Shidorov here makes a lot of sense. Those are like 2 trains passing in the night, because they're guys that started the season at sort of opposite ends of the scoring and have traded places. And they're just passing each other by, but it feels like Shun Sato's going in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
Everything that you said there, I agree with, as far as Shun looking so good earlier on, starting to become the skater we wanted to see from him. And then it just felt like he peaked too soon. And I think the pressure of turning into the second Japanese man has really shaken him up in some way. That's a deep federation. There's a lot of talent there. I think that he is going to Worlds on the strength of having made it to the Grand Prix final, but he did not have a good Japanese nationals, and he has just been kind of fading over the course of the season. We haven't seen him for a little while, and I'm hoping that he's had a chance to regroup and put himself back together. But even though he has the 3rd highest score of the season, he's one of the people I have the least amount of confidence in going into this competition. And that makes me sad, because I really like Shun. But when you contrast that with Mikhail Shidorov from Kazakhstan, you have a skater who started off the season fairly modestly as far as his scores and his results, where he was clearly trying to build his programs around increasing his technical in really interesting ways. Multiple times this season, he's done combinations nobody's ever done before, not always in clean programs, but making quiet little bits of history that people weren't even noticing at first and then catching later on. He looks like a skater who's poised to peak late in the season, and we just saw him win 4 continents. with a really strong performance there. One that I do think, particularly in the free skate, felt a little bit more mechanical than fully emotionally invested in that Dune program, but highly effective and got in that 285.10, which again, very beatable by the top guys, but much stronger than a lot of the rest of the field. And there's still a higher ceiling for Mikhail. Those weren't perfect programs. Of everybody outside of, say, Adam Shaw-Fa, Mikhail, I think, has the highest overall technical ability of everybody who's below Ilya and Yuma. If he can bring it all together, I think he's a real threat for the podium. I
think Mikhail Shidorov is just a threat for any medal. For as much as he is not the all-around incredible skater that Yuma Kageyama is, and he's not the, I hate to say something as dramatic as the once-in-a-generation talent like Malinin, but Mikhail just keeps getting better. And he wants to be the all-around skater. He wants to be, frankly, the national hero of Kazakhstan in this way. He knows what's on his shoulders. He has immense respect for it, and he wants to grow, and he keeps getting better. He is on a path towards doing big things, and I think this World Championships could be a big step in that for him.
Yeah, I think Mikhail is similar to how we talked about Nina Petrokina in the last episode, somebody who isn't necessarily riding with enormous expectations, but with a huge amount of momentum.
Yes.
I feel like that's the same thing for Shidorov. I think that he's coming into this with a lot of wind in his sails, a lot to prove, but not the expectation of a gold medal on him. So I think he really has an opportunity to just come out and deliver the best skates that we've ever seen from him and really show the world what he has to offer.
I do want to hit on the next two men that I'm thinking about, though, because they're the two Frenchmen having their own competition within the competition, because they're so radically different, but they are the two next top scorers of the season. So Kevin Amos at Skate America got a 282.88. We were lucky enough to be in that audience, and that was the best skating I have ever seen live and in person ever. Like, it was so beautiful to see. However, Kevin, as I'm sure all of you listening know, is one of the most inconsistent skaters on the circuit. He can be genius, and he can fall apart. And we never, ever know which version we're going to get. And goodness, I want to see that genius come out, because he is absolutely a podium threat on the right day. But it has to be the right day.
We often see him kind of peak early and taper off as the season goes along, which is unfortunate. I think he's in a much better headspace this season than last year, so I don't expect a complete collapse like has happened in the past. But if there is an interesting note, it's that Kevin seems to skate really well when he's in the States.
He does, interestingly.
And then in the last couple of seasons, that's been at Skate America, which is in Allen, Texas. And
that's his arena.
Yeah. But this is going to be in Boston in the United States, and you never know how those things just kind of shake out. Maybe the States are just really kind to Kevin Amos.
The U.S. fans love Kevin Amos.
Yeah.
So that helps.
Yeah. I don't have giant expectations for him here. I am just hoping for good skates. I don't expect big scores. I just want him to be happy with them, and I want them to be solid. I don't want giant collapses, and I don't want that to be the story again for this season. I'm far more interested to see what happens with Adam Shaw-Fa, because his top score of the season is 272.38. That's far back from what he's capable of. You know, we start at the top talking about how he was the extraordinary comeback kid last year by getting on the podium with that bronze. It's not out of the realm of possibility that Adam could do that again this year, but it's been a rough season full of challenges, full of injuries, a lot of things that he had to pull out of so that he could recover. So he doesn't have as much time with these programs as a lot of the other skaters do. He doesn't have quite as many competitions, and he's been not at full power.
True. I was really happy to see him do a small competition a few weeks ago just to get one more in after Europeans, and he did really well at that. So I think that gives him a little bit, I hope, of a boost going into this competition. But yeah, I am really curious to see what we get from Adam. Like, he is 100% capable of being up there with Ilya and Yuma again. And he's also capable of being in 15th or 20th. It's brutal, this sport, and it's watching how rough it has been on him to find his way back to what we were seeing from him last year. So what we see here is kind of a big mystery when it comes to Adam. But personally, I know I'm just excited to watch him. Adam not being a part of the season for so much of it was a bummer. I didn't realize how much I counted on seeing his version of skating. Like, he brings something so specific. And when he wasn't there, I genuinely was like, man, I miss watching Adam. So I'm just excited to see him.
Yeah, stylistically, he's one of my favorite men's skaters for sure. He is another guy with a Dune program, one of the 17 Dune programs this season. And I think that while he is the superior artistic skater over Mikhail Shidorov, I think that Mikhail's Dune program is more cohesive. And when he fully invests it with that kind of performance value, I think it's the better program.
You also just don't like the part where Adam just like dies on the ice.
Yeah, there's that sequence where he just takes a little nap on the ice for a little bit. And I don't like that sequence at all. That doesn't work for me. I don't like that hard pause. And I think that's a detriment to his program overall. I don't know what to expect from Adam here. It could go a lot of different ways, but he does tend to show up under crazy pressure. And particularly if he's frustrated, he's one of those people that can, if you light the fire under him, sometimes amazing things happen, and that could happen here.
Skating angry is good for Adam Schoenfa. I like that.
I like a good skate angry.
I know. I do think there's a few other people here who might be able to squeak onto the podium. Obviously, my personal favorite, and I say obviously to anyone who's been listening, it doesn't take much of a guess, is Junwon Cha. I bring him up now, even though his highest score of the season was a 265.02. I don't like that. I don't think it's true.
I have some disagreements with that as well.
I have disagreements, mostly because at the Asian Winter Games that he won, he got a 281.69 over Yuma Kageyama. So he is absolutely in this mix. And his long program is my favorite of the season. I'm just calling it now. Favorite. Love it so much. And I feel like he has been similar to Shidorov, like coming up as the season has gone on. He had a really strong showing at Four Continents, falling just behind Shidorov. I'm hoping if we see 2 clean programs from June, please, that would be so great. He has a chance. He genuinely has a chance.
Contextually, he wasn't just behind Shidorov at Four Continents. He was 20 points behind.
Okay, fine.
So that is a pretty significant difference between them.
I have a bias.
But I do think he was underscored there.
Yes.
And I think that if you look at his trajectory, he is trending the right direction to peak here at Worlds. Jude is just one of the most lovely skaters in the men's competition. He brings such extraordinary interpretation. His jumps, when he doesn't fall, because he's the worst faller, the ugliest faller.
It's so sad.
But if
but he's the most beautiful everything else. Like, yeah. He's so gorgeous on the ice.
Right, yeah. So if he comes into this well-rested, in the right mindset, and it comes together for him, he could deliver skates for the ages. Or he could flop on that quad sal, run into the boards, and it could all go downhill. It could really go either way pretty hard for Junwon. So his free skate is fantastic, and it's only gotten better as the season has gone along. So I have every confidence that he can go out there and do something special here.
I hope so. 2 other guys that I think could technically be a threat depending on the day. Lucas Britschke, our European champion. He had to have surprise surgery, though, while he was doing art on ice, and hopefully is back to normal. It sounded relatively minor, but still surgery right before Worlds, not what you want. So fingers crossed that he can come here and be fabulous. But also Daniel Grassel. For all that he is not always my flavor of a skater, he has been really strong and consistent this season and was on the Grand Prix final podium. So you can't count him out.
I don't have enormous confidence in either of these guys here. For Lucas, he won the European Championships, but with a pretty soft score of 267.09. That's very beatable. Lucas is a very entertaining skater. He's a lot of fun. And I think that those programs that he has, particularly the one that is built around like sign language ideas, there's a lot of intent behind those programs. There's a lot of message that he's working with there. I think that's a wonderful thing that he maybe isn't entirely skating up to. And I would like to see him deliver a fully evolved version of both those programs. I don't think that he technically or artistically is quite in the neighborhood he needs to be to make the podium. He's a lot of fun, but post-surgery, I just don't know. With Grassel, early in the season, he was really making himself look like a contender for the higher rankings, and then has kind of dipped down as the season has gone on a little bit. He's got powerful technical, and he's delivered more consistent and cleaner programs than some of the other male competitors.
Clean with an asterisk.
Clean with an asterisk, because there are definitely some cues and problems in there, and particularly that free skate is super awkward. His Billy Elliot free skate is, I think, aesthetically unappealing and disjointed. And I get that for some people, they understand the storytelling of it and it works for some folks. It very much doesn't for others from stuff I've seen online. I think that Daniel has a lot to offer. I wish that program wasn't so grating to me. I don't think that he's a real challenger against some of the other guys here, but he's definitely one of those people that's like a spoiler candidate.
Yes.
Because if other people fall apart, if Daniel randomly shows up and skates the skates of his life, he could be on the podium.
I think there's a few people like that. The ones that are waiting in the wings, kind of waiting for the men to men. The Nika Agatzis of the world, who has big jumps, but not a lot of artistic value to his programs. He's gotten better for sure, but is still much more of a technical skater than anything else.
And has not been performing as well this season as he obviously wants. You know he can do better than what he's been doing. He's been killing it in the galas with his Deadpool program, but his highest score of the season is 261.71. And for Nika, you can see that that is really frustrating.
But I think the thing that I'm interested in, especially with this being the World Championships before the Olympic Games, like we talked about in part one of this with the women's and pairs, there's so much pressure on these skaters, not just to get on a podium, but also to stay high enough in the rankings to secure Olympic spots for their country next year, to give themselves that opportunity to make the Olympic team. So there's, to use what you had said earlier about Japan's men not doing as well as everyone expected, there's a lot of pressure on Yuma Shun and the other third man, Tatsuya Saboi, who's had some really wonderful swing ups in his scores and his performances this season, but has also had inconsistency. So tons of pressure on him. And also, as a US-centric person, look at Andrew Torgashev, who I am a fan of the Pizza King. Love Andrew Torgashev. And I want him so badly to skate two perfect programs here. So much. And he doesn't have a chance at the podium. It's highly, highly, highly unlikely. But he absolutely plays a critical role in us getting 3 spots at the Olympic Games next season, as does Jason Brown.
So Torgashev, with a maxed out number of 246.58 this season, I feel like that number doesn't represent well the quality of his skates.
No.
He doesn't have the technical firepower that the top guys have. However, he has been consistently delivering artistically refined, beautiful skates, oftentimes very clean. He's only gotten better as the season's gone along.
He was so good at Nationals.
Yes, absolutely extraordinary at Nationals. So great on the Grand Prix series. Got himself on the podium with a bronze at Grand Prix de France. Was just off the podium at NHK Trophy. That's been a great season for him. And even though the podium is probably realistically out of reach, the top 10 is not. I feel like as long as Torgashev has Brendan Fraser as his coach there with him, it feels like his good luck charms through the whole season. As long as the two of them together, Torgashev always just looks incredibly centered. At US Nationals, he was just fabulous. If he brings that same energy here, I think he could really secure a top 10 finish. For me, the bigger question mark is Jason Brown.
For sure. Jason Brown comes into Worlds the past couple of seasons and stays in, I believe, both times the top 6.
I think he was 6 at both the last 2 Worlds.
Which is incredible. He is Jason Brown. He is 100% capable of coming here and doing the same thing again. And nobody ever really counts him as one of those top 6. And he just keeps sliding in there because he is so exceptional. But he skated the full Grand Prix this year and showed a lot of difficulty, particularly with his triple axel and just consistency. He has said that that was kind of what has been expected because in those previous couple of seasons, he didn't skate until Nationals both years and then made the world team and then came in 6th. Incredible job. But because of those Grand Prix, I don't even want to call them failures because they're just experience points. So he has been steadily coming towards this, but we didn't see him at Nationals. So we don't know where he's at. And I don't know what to make of it. I love Jason Brown. And Mike, again, I want to see clean skates. I want to see that magnificent Jason Brown that we have all seen many times. But I have no idea what to expect here.
Like we talked about with Isabeau Levito, who got the bye in despite having very little of a season. Jason didn't compete at nationals. He just has the track record of being a veteran, solid performer who
skates up.
You know, if we're going by the season, his best score of the season is a 229.09. That is very low. And
for him, yeah.
For him, if he skates that here, he's going to be way back in the pack. But Jason tends to rise to the occasion.
Yes.
We just don't have a U.S. Nationals to compare that to. So he is a huge question mark to me right now.
Well, while there are plenty of other skaters here that absolutely could stand a chance of surprising us, and I can't wait personally just to see Dennis Vasiliev's skate, period. So I will mention him. I think it's probably a good time for us to start looking at our picks. So who, Adrian, do you think will be on this wild men's podium?
I think the podium will shake out with Ilya Malinin in first, Mikhail Shidorov in second, and Yuma Kageyama in third.
That is a bold choice, but I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. I am going to go with Ilya Malinin in gold, Yuma Kageyama in a close silver, and bronze I will also go with Mikhail Shidorov. Okay, but what about the heart picks? Because I'm going to throw mine out and then I'm giving you some time.
Because she can see by my face that you in audio can't see, which is I didn't think about this previously.
So if I'm going with my heart, I would have Yuma Kageyama take this because I feel like he has fought so hard to get to that gold medal, especially going into the Olympic Games. I think it would be really cool if he got one too, so that it made the Olympics a little bit more of a who knows what's going to happen. So I'm going Yuma, Ilya, Jun Won-cha, because I'm not going to take Jun Won-cha off that podium.
I don't really know how to quantify this because all these skaters are so wildly different and I really like all of them. I think as a story goes, I think Mikhail Shidorov is sort of the most interesting of all of them. I would love to see Jun Won-cha on the podium as well. Again, like I talked about earlier, there's kind of no wrong answers. Like everybody that we talked about in the biggest threat group, I know I'm waffling here. She's giving me the same face that I make when I can't decide on where to go for dinner is what I'm doing right now. So yeah, I'm going to say Mikhail Shidorov in first as a heart pick, just because I love the progression that he's had this season. And I think he's coming into it with a really interesting wave of momentum.
All right. I will accept this and move on.
I don't know why you're treating that like a cop-out.
Let's talk about the dance competition, because I do feel like this one is probably the most predictable, except for the top two, where I feel like I don't know the answer anymore. I felt like I knew the answer a month ago, but then Four Continents happened, and now I'm a little bit iffy. So let's start by talking about the top scoring team by a smidge this season, the reigning world champions, Madison Chock and Evan Bates.
At Grand Prix final, they won with a 219.85. Really strong score. Again, we're not going to talk about national scores because they're fake. And I think that what they delivered there were really beautiful performances. Chock and Bates are my favorite team. I talk about it all the time. I think that their Take 5 free dance is extraordinary.
Best of the season.
Everything that I want to see in an ice dance program. It's full of storytelling and character work. It showcases the two of them equally. The criticism is so often that Madison Chock is the show and Evan Bates is sort of like the platform that raises her up. He's not as showy as her. And I think that the Take 5 program showcases them both in a way that almost nothing I've seen from them before has. If they have a vulnerability, it is their rhythm dance, which is very, very good. But because it's a compilation of music across a lot of different genres, it doesn't have a unified story, and it is not as solid a program as their main competitors here in Gilles and Poirier. This is the total game of inches because there's a razor margin between these two teams, and sometimes it just feels like a matter of preference. Both teams, however, have shown vulnerability when it comes to falls this season. In competition, both of them have had significant falls that have taken them off the top of the podium or out of the podium entirely. And we also, it was in an exhibition performance, but we saw Chalk and Bates go down in their Legacy on Ice performance with a pretty bad fall. Now, that was with a prop, so that's a completely different kind of thing. But both these teams do have that fallibility in their programs sometimes, and that could shake things up.
Well, yeah, exactly. Like Gilles and Poirier, their highest score of the season was recent at Four Continents Championships with a 218.46, and that was over Chalk and Bates. Neither one of those teams had any real major mistakes at that competition. And Chalk and Bates, again, their rhythm dance is what lost it for them because they won the free skate, but that margin was super close. So like you said, this is a game of inches, if not centimeters, between these two teams. And I do really think it's going to be in the day, if they're both perfect, just who do the judges feel more connected to? What does the emotional resonance of being the hometown team for Chalk and Bates, because it's a U.S. World, does that help them? Or does the fact that Gilles and Poirier have been steadily moving up in the ranks for so long, and this is just their season? That rhythm dance, to me, is where it's going to be won or lost for either of these teams.
Yeah, their Beach Boys, Ken and Barbie themed rhythm dance is definitely one of the best of the season.
It works so well on them.
Yeah, it's such a great character piece. It's cohesive in a way that Chalk and Bates' program isn't, and it's just a ton of fun. And I think that that's likely to win a crowd in a big way. People have argued in the comments over my feelings about the Whiter Shade of Pale free dance that they do. I don't think that's as nearly as an accessible program as the Take 5 program is. Some people disagree with me on that. But how a Boston audience is going to react to that, I don't know. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how much the crowd's reaction affects the judging.
I agree. I like that Whiter Shade of Pale program quite a lot. I know more than you do. And I think it's reasonable to think that that program could win them a world title. But over Chalk and Bates' Take 5, it would make me sad, because that is not just my favorite dance program of the season in Take 5, but my favorite Chalk and Bates program I've ever seen. That program, to me, is a defining program for them. So I am definitely kind of hoping for Chalk and Bates to have that advantage there, but I don't love their rhythm dance. So we'll see. But it's the other team that is the most likely to upset this balance is Italy's Charlene Guinard and Marco Fabbri. They have been on the podium the past few years as well. They are absolutely capable of gigantic numbers, and they are right there as probably the steadiest, most technical team, even though they've had huge problems in a few competitions this season, one in particular. I don't love their free dance, but it has improved a lot since the beginning of the season. That robot-themed free dance is just not my thing, but they could still come in here and upset the two top teams.
I think that Guinard and Fabbri are the most vulnerable of the top 5 teams, both because their performances have not been as strong in places and because it feels like the judges have not loved the material. Their rhythm dance is strong, but not nearly as compelling or refined as either of the top 2 teams. I think that there's a significant disadvantage there. And the robot program, while it has, like you said, it's come a long way, it's just kind of kitschy in a way that I think when you look at the refined sophistication that the top 2 teams have, it just isn't going to hold up. And we really haven't seen them run up against each other except for the Grand Prix final. I'll be very curious to see what they can pull off. Their top score of the season is 3 points behind Gilles and Poirier and 4 points behind Chalk and Bates. And that's leagues of difference in ice dance. And we've seen them be upset by Fear and Gibson this season. If there's a team poised to grab the energy of an American audience and turn it to their advantage, it is absolutely Great Britain's Fear and Gibson.
I am very curious about Lila Fear and Lewis Gibson at this World Championships because, to your point, Guinard and Fabbri have shown vulnerability. They have been defeated by Fear and Gibson, and you stole the exact idea I had out of my brain that particularly their free dance to Beyonce in Boston, if they kill it, like they are entirely capable of doing. We always talk about the fact that the judges are an extension of the audience. they can use that fuel to get bigger scores. They have done it before. So while they might not have the level of skating skills of the top three, they might not have that same technical ability yet in their development. Momentum is such a factor. Charisma is such a factor, and the fans and the reaction is such a factor. So they finished that program with Beyonce's Crazy in Love. And you can't tell me if they're not destroying that audience and the audience is on their feet, that their scores won't be in slightly, if not more than slightly, upgraded with that kind of energy.
They are crowd pleasers, and this program can bring the house down. I was really skeptical of the Beyonce program at the beginning of the season, particularly after last year's Rocky program, which wasn't great to begin with, but ended up being essentially iconic. So much fun. It was so beautifully delivered.
And it was brave.
It was very brave, and it was very character oriented, and it was designed to play to their strengths. They don't skate like any of these other teams, and they have to not play by anybody else's strategy, but to their own. And they've really started to do that over the past couple of seasons, and it started to pay off towards the end of this one. And yeah, I think that they are very well situated to bump off Guinard and Fabry if they can just nail it in that free dance.
It's true. The team that I am excited to see ideally move up this season is Le Preuve and Berceau. They've had an excellent season, taking silver over Fear and Gibson at Europeans.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Which was partially due to Fear and Gibson having not their best rhythm dance, and they came really, really close after the free, but still edged them out. But those programs this year are just so compelling, especially their free dance. I feel like everything that Guinard and Fabry have tried to do with making a different, unique, edgy free dance, Le Preuve and Berceau did the same, but successfully. They're trying a different approach than a lot of the other teams. And I really love this team, and especially following the announcement of Guillaume Cizeron and Laurence Fournier-Boudry now skating for France, I want Le Preuve and Berceau to assert themselves here and make sure that it is very clear that they 100% are on that Olympic team and are leading that charge for France, because they have earned it at this point.
Le Preuve and Berceau are so clearly that team that stylistically totally hit for some people and rub others the wrong way. It's always so curious to me how much some people are like, oh, that leaves me cold. And others are like, those are amazing. I love these programs. I love this team. I like that they are a little more avant-garde. I recognize that they don't carry the type of character sophistication that you see in, say, like Chalk and Bates or Gillis and Boyer. However, I think that they bring something really fresh and interesting stylistically to the ice. Mostly what I'm going to be curious to see is how they hit with the American audience in Boston. An American audience could be super receptive to that in a way that maybe we haven't seen in other places. Much like Fear and Gibson, I think that a lot of how they're received by the judges is going to depend on how the audience reacts to them. I'd love to see them kind of rise up the ranks, but how it's going to fall between these teams that are really close here is challenging. Because when we look at Le Preuve and Berceau from France, and then Turkila and Versluis from Finland, and then Lajoie and Legas from Canada, these are all teams who their best scores of the season are separated by like a point, maybe a point and a half. If they all rise to the occasion, any one of them is scraping near that top 4, top 5.
It's interesting because I really do feel like those 3 teams you said they're going to be fighting to be that top 5 team. The teams that we're talking about now are the future of ice dance, because while the Olympic Games are next year and the top teams are likely to stay the top teams next year as well, it's looking beyond that, because all of these teams below them are starting to set themselves up for the next quadrennial already. So it's sort of like elbowing around for space, like who's ranked where, because that will play out once we're past the Olympics next year. Turkila and Versluis are the ones that I personally feel like have been the most underscored this season.
Yes, criminally underscored.
I don't always understand it. I know that there are a lot of people I've seen online talk about like, oh, well, they're not as refined yet, or they don't have this yet. I understand to a degree, but also I've listen to other people, like my brain goes to Ben Augusto talking about them and being like, I don't know why they're getting these scores. Or some of the ISU commentators saying the same thing. It definitely feels like they are right there. They are right scraping at the heels of those top teams and just not quite getting the lift from the judges yet. I don't expect them to be top 5, honestly. I expect either Lajoie and Legat or Lepreuve and Brosseau to get that. But I feel like Turquille and Versluis, if they're clean, probably deserve it. I'm really conflicted there because I love all 3 of these teams. I think they're all brilliant. But Turquille and Versluis, I have a soft spot for because I do feel like they are underappreciated.
Oh, yeah. Stylistically, Turquille and Versluis have just so hit all of my buttons over the last couple of seasons. Their rhythm dance, which is like a sort of 50s, 60s sock hop kind of thing, is one of the most thematically on point of all of the rhythm dances this season. I think they nail all of the social dance elements. It looks so much better on them. Like last year's 80s themed rhythm dance just didn't quite connect with them stylistically, and this one looks great on them. Every time I see this team, I'm just enamored with their programs and with their skating, and then angry with the judges afterwards because I feel like they just get docked for odd stuff that doesn't make any sense to me. It always feels like the judges just kind of putting them in the place where they want them to be rather than where they should have been, which is one of those things about ice dance that makes me crazy. And particularly with a team that I enjoy as much as this is just maddening at times. But I do agree that the likelihood is that they will slide behind Canada's Marjorie Lajoie and Zachary Legat, who have been a little tiny bit inconsistent this season. But I think that what we've seen them do towards the end of the season is make some fixes to that rhythm dance so that it is less kitschy, Austin Powersy campy, and then ride on the power of their Sound of Silence free dance.
They had to kind of start a little soft this season just because Marjorie was still recovering from a second concussion last year, and it left them behind a lot of the other teams because they weren't able to try a lot of new things. So they had to kind of build in a lot of old favorites from previous seasons' programs to build their new programs. And it did look a lot better at Four Continents. I know it's a small thing, but like Zach's new costume was so much better than wearing the Austin Powers cosplay that he kind of had before. And it just seemed like he was more comfortable and confident on the ice in it. So I expect this team to land in 5th. I think that they keep moving forward. And if they skate clean, I think it's just a given.
I adore this team, but I don't like their material as much as I like Lapareva and Brosseau and Turquille and Versluis's programs. So I'm kind of in a toss-up in it because any one of these teams in a higher spot makes me happy because I adore all of them.
Yes.
I'll be very curious to see who really shows up here and makes the case for themselves. But I think that not even looking at the point totals, because again, they're all within 1.5 points of each other. I think that the judges tend to favor Lala. So you're right. I think they're the likely 5th place team.
The team, though, that I think I'm the most excited to see here is Olivia Smart and Tim Dieck from Spain, because their Dune program is, I feel, the program of the season. And ice dance, just
other than the Take 5,
that one is my favorite, but the Dune program is like iconic.
It should be. It's incredible.
They've even got to like the ISU awards for whatever you feel about those. They're nominated. They made the short list for most entertaining program of the season
and best costumes.
So we're obviously not the only ones going, oh my God, this program. It's the Dune program for sure. No question.
Yeah.
And they keep getting more love from the judges, which they should. So I'm curious. Top 10 to me for them feels, as long as they're clean, solid. But I'm real curious to see where they land.
They've been such a surprise this season. I mean, I love this team from Go.
Yes. I want to be Olivia Smart's friend.
Yeah.
I'm just going to put it out there.
I think that at the start of the season, the Dune program got a lot of side eye from people. They had some troubles with it in the Challenger series. The costumes initially didn't work very well. And then they got a costume refresh by Madison Schock, who completely redesigned Olivia's outfit and did it perfectly. It's perfect. We'll
It's
just be honest,
perfect.
it's perfect. And between that and them tweaking and fixing that program, the last couple times we've seen it, it has been magnificent. It is a movie on ice. It tells a complete story. Like you said, we've seen so many Dune programs this season, and nobody does it as well as this team.
Not even close.
The way that they really take you on a ride and give you a full cinematic experience on ice, I think is unique amongst any of the other performances this season. And it is a real toss-up for me between like Take 5 and that one as far as what are my favorite programs of the season, because they're so very different from one another. I think the struggle for Smart and Deke is, one, just the ice dance hierarchy, although they have surprised several times this season by bumping out teams that they normally wouldn't have been ranked ahead of. And their rhythm dance is really good, but is not as compelling or I think technically proficient as some of those top teams. So I think that getting up there into that realm of like a Fear and Gibson, La Prezo, Sir Keelan versus Lala is challenging. However, just the strength of that free dance, if they nail that in Boston, it's going to change the trajectory for them in the sport.
I completely agree with that. It could really give them an advantage going into next year.
But if you look at scores-wise, at the top scores of the season, I think it is surprising to see that they are 0.01 ahead of the US's Carrera and Ponomarenko, because Carrera and Ponomarenko have been pretty consistently near the podium and one of those higher teams. Before looking at the scores, I would have been like, oh, I think they would probably slot in ahead of like La Prezo or Tequila and Versluis. And then it's seeing that, no, they're like 6 points behind them with their top scores. They've been so good. We've seen some of their practices getting ready to go to Boston, and they've looked really, really sharp. That Carmen program could bring the roof down.
So good. So good. They're a next quadrennial team, and they know it. They're setting themselves up for what's going to come in the next 4 years for them. However, yeah, seeing their practices, seeing them at nationals, they are so, so strong, and they just keep getting better. Anthony has just blown my mind in terms of his progress in the past 2 years. I was not that big of a fan of his, not to be a downer. I thought he was fine. Christina, to me, just outshone him so much in the beginning. And now I watch them and I'm just boggled by how good they both are. I am just so excited to see where this team goes. Here, I think a top 10 finish is a very good possibility for them, but this is a crazy deep field. I mean, think about all the teams that we've just talked about. And then you look below them and you see people like Allison Reed and Saulius Ambrosivicius. They were, I think, 6th or 7th last year. They are a great team, and they're behind everyone we've just talked about, and Diana Davis and Gleb Smolkin, too, who were still in that top 10 range. So this is a crazy deep field.
Davis and Smolkin, their top score of the season was a 201.87, but they got it like in the Challenger Series, and the rest of the season, they've been solid, but kind of back in the pack, oftentimes landing in the top 10 or just outside of it at some of the bigger competitions. Overall, I don't think that their programs are super compelling, but I do think the thing you have to watch out for that team is that their free skate is to Led Zeppelin.
Yeah, that's a good point.
They're doing a Led Zeppelin program
in Boston,
in the United States. If you can kick on Zepp in the States, there's a good chance you can grab a crowd with it. And while that program feels kind of weird in comparison to a lot of the other skaters, it could be poised specifically for that moment, and you can't put it past the audience to lift them up with that. Again, a team that I'm a little iffy on. I think Gleb is really strong. I think Diana, she's actually gotten better this season. We saw them in person, and I think that there's more going on with that team than initially I was seeing, but they don't tend to leave a big impression. Riding on the power of the music there is their best opportunity to move up in that ranking.
But I think that's actually one of the troubles I see for Reed and Ambrosivicius. I love this team. I think that they are just brilliant, but the material has kind of let them down a little bit this season. Their Puppet Masters free dance that they have, I really enjoy it mostly because I love seeing Allison kind of get evil and maniacal, but it hasn't really won over the judges. And it feels like something has just not quite hit. And because of that, we've seen them sort of drop down in the rankings a bit.
I think the struggle for Allison and Saulius from Lithuania is that last season they ended on such a high with such extraordinary programs They came in on the podium at Europeans, at home. They were my Gold in My Heart pick for the entire season, particularly their free dance last year, which was the high water mark of the season for me. I just loved it. I love this team. I love their storytelling. I love the darkness that they bring to some of those programs and then play with such huge thematics. But yeah, the Puppet Master program just kind of hasn't hit. And they could do it here. It could finally come together and make it happen. I hope that it does. But yeah, I just think that the material hasn't worked quite as well. And they're going to have to really examine how that works out here as they go into next season, leading up to the Olympics, about how they're going to pick their material, because I think it hasn't worked as well.
I agree.
And I think that when you contrast that with the other Finnish team whose material works perfectly on them, who are not playing in the same league scores-wise, but Yuka Orihara and Juho Pyrinen's programs fit them like a glove and are killing it with audiences.
They are my other pick for my other favorite program of the season, because I don't like a chorus line as a musical. And I am a musical theater person, but that's never been my flavor. And when it's them, I will watch it all day long. It is incredible. I love this team. I think they're going to move up to top 10. I really do. If they kill it here, if they are clean, I think they're jumping over a few people, especially watching them at Euros. They even seemed completely shocked by how well received it was. And while it's totally different than a Zeppelin program, I do think, I mean, a chorus line and a Zeppelin is pretty much as far apart as you can get. I still think that if they do what they do perfectly, I think they're going to have that audience in the palm of their hands. She sells so much. And frankly, he does too.
Yeah.
Like, they're equal theater kids. They're going to bring so much theater kid energy that I think that they could own that Boston audience and move into the top 10. So that, if I have a prediction that has nothing to do with the podium, it's that those two are going to be top 10 this time.
This Worlds is a real opportunity for a bunch of these teams to just raise their international profile. Even if they don't score amazingly well, the opportunity for them to get seen by really enthusiastic audiences that will elevate their awareness. That's the opportunity here for a team like Orihara and Pyyrinen. These programs are just as much fun as you can have on ice. Like, they're
delightful.
Yeah, I don't know that anybody else has put a smile on my face this season the way their programs do. And they're, like you said, the big theater kid energy could devastate here in the States. So I'll be very curious to see how it comes together, but I expect thrilling performances out of those two.
There are so many other teams here, though. I mean, you have both of the Czech teams of Tasharov and Tashler and the Mraziks. They haven't had their best seasons, but they're always threats. You have Caroline Green and Michael Parsons from the U.S., who have been slowly rebuilding this season and coming back into their own. So I'm hoping for great things from them here. And I love Hana Lim and Ye Kwan. I want to see where they land here, because this will be their first Olympic Games, as long as everything goes to plan, next year. So I want to see where they fall in the whole mix here.
And if there's a team that I'm kind of concerned for, it's the other French team of Demouget and Le Mercier, mostly because there's a very good chance that team gets sidelined next season with the introduction of Fournier-Boudre and Cicerone as a ice dance team for France. Demouget and Le Mercier are a really aesthetically pleasing team that looked better last season than they have this season. And with a likely 2 spots available for the French going into the Olympics, there's a very good chance that they're going to get bumped out. And that sucks. Who knows what will happen next season and how well Fournier-Boudre and Cicerone do, but the French Federation have seemed to have made it pretty obvious that they're thinking of them as their marquee team going to next season, despite no track record of them as an actual team together. And the first casualty of that is likely Demouget and Le Mercier. So I think they have to go into this World on a mission to prove that they can be in that top 13. I think that's where they have to be shooting for. And I think that's going to be very tough with the competition they're going up against.
There's just so much. But with that, since we've been talking about it for a while and thinking about it for even longer, who are your podium picks?
Oh, God.
I know, right?
I think there's a very good chance that we will see an upset here and that Gillis and Poirier will take the world championships, and that Chalk and Bates will be a shade behind them. And then I think Fear and Gibson will nudge out the Italians for that 3rd spot.
Wow. just to be a contrarian, I'm going to say Chalk and Bates will hold by an edge over Gillis and Poirier, and that the Italians will take third just because the Olympics are there next year. And because, they're brilliant. This is not a knock on them. It's like everything is just so marginally close that I'm just going to stick with how it on paper looks. All right. What's your heart say?
If it was my heart, it's going to get weird.
I love that. Let's make it weird.
Because if it was my heart and the things that I like the best, it would go Chalk and Bates in first. And then it would be Spain, Smart and Deke in second. And then Orihara and Purinen from Finland in third. And then in fourth, Laporeva and Berceau. That's my most complete of any of these things.
That's more complete than any I've
shared. That's my top four.
Interesting.
It's weird, I know.
If we're going to make this entirely weird,
yeah.
Let's just go ham.
Let's get weird, man.
Let's get weird. All right, then I'm giving the gold to Smart and Deke because I love Olivia Smart. I think she's the greatest. So I'm like, yeah, let's put her up there. Chalk and Bates, take 5. My favorite program of the season in ice dance. Yes, let's give it to them. And I agree. Let's give that bronze medal to those Finnish theater kid energy. I don't even know the words. I can't find them. They're not good enough for them. Orihara and Purinen.
You call them weirdos, but like in the most complimentary way and the way that I like best. Yeah.
Oh, man, I love them. Yeah. I love that we just went total heart picks. That's good.
Yeah, just throw logic out the window here and just, if it's just the programs I'm going to watch over and over again, then yeah, it's those.
All right. We're ready. We're ready for the World Championships.
Oh my goodness. We talked a lot in the women's and pairs about the sheer anxiety of it all. I don't know if I feel that quite the same way talking about this one, but no. I think going into, especially when we get to the podium for the ice dance, I think that the anxiety might be a very real thing. As much as it always feels like ice dance is preordained, this one feels like there is real opportunity for some change-ups, and because a small mistake in an element can throw away a podium place, there is a lot riding on it, especially going into the Olympic season. And I think that's going to be a bit of a nail biter. And in the men's, I think it's just going to get nuts. That is just going to go all over the place. We're going to see some people crack numbers they haven't seen all season and great skaters collapse. Who the hell knows what's going to go on there?
What's weird is that, like, I agree with you that I don't feel as anxious. The dance, as soon as we started talking about it, my anxiety level went up where I was like, I don't know, this is crazy. But the men, I am the least anxious about, even though the men's, to be completely candid, has always been my favorite discipline because of the kind of bonkers nature of it in general. That one I'm not that anxious about because I expect it to be chaos. I think that makes it somehow easier to just sort of be like, all right, well, I expect some brilliance and some complete meltdowns. So let's see what happens.
Yeah. And I'm going to be very curious to see what the Boston audience feels like. Now, obviously, it's located in Boston, but there's going to be people coming from all over the country and the world to be there.
And I'm jealous of all of you.
Yeah, but I expect a pretty rambunctious crowd.
At the Garden in Boston?
Yeah. And after everything that's happened this season, after the plane crash, the way that impacted that community, what we need is a really baller Worlds there in Boston. And I think that audience is going to be hungry for it. So
I hope so.
I'm hoping that we get great performances coupled with an audience that is absolutely out of its mind. I want them to put on some competition for Lithuania last year, which is like the high watermark of audiences for years now. Lithuania stands on the shoulders of everybody else by having the best overall event and just the greatest crowd. And I want to see my American audience that we don't get to be a part of there personally. I want to see them show up and really make this something special and just support everybody.
That is the one reason why I do really want to see big programs specifically from Ilya, because if there is someone that could shake the rafters if he kills it, it's Ilya.
Yeah.
So regardless of where he places on a podium, I want to see him throw down because I know that that audience will devour it.
So our next episode will be the post-Worlds recap, giving all of our reactions to everything that's going on.
Good golly.
We're going to be an anxious mess through all of this. This is going to dominate our lives for the next week. But in the meantime, thank you for joining us for this episode. Thank you for all the great comments that you left on our last one and all the emails and feedback that we've gotten on social channels and stuff too. All of the support has been fabulous. Let us know wherever you're leaving comments, what your expectations are, who your picks are.
If you're going,
please
tell me about it. I want to hear.
Yeah. And we definitely, after this is all over, we want to hear about your experience there too, because we're so jealous that you get to be a part of this if you are going to be in the audience for Worlds, because I think it's going to be a heck of a ride. But we're going to be talking to you again after the big show is over to share our reactions and just bathe in the afterglow. And for Choreography, I'm Adrian Buskey.
And I'm Wendy Buskey.
We will talk to you next time.
Bye.